Now, turning to what was going on in America. America's literature gets going. Romantic period, Washington Irving. He's sometimes called well, I think he's the first American writer famous simply because he was a writer. Thomas Jefferson was a great writer. Ben Franklin was a great writer. But that's all Washington Irving did. And he wrote short stories mostly. A European audience was ready for this now. His Legend of Sleepy Hollow is one that's with a Ichabod Crane in it. Now, reading these in the original is a little tricky. I mean, they're usually used for kids, but it was simpler versions because the style was so awkward and strange. But it's great. Sometimes it's called The Headless Horseman. Rip Van Winkle, Rip Van Winkle, that's the other one. He liked to set his stories along the Hudson River. These were Classics Illustrated. I had a whole collection of these when I was a kid, and I still have some of them left. I'll show you more of them as we go. Oh, here's Robinson Crusoe. These older ones are the nicer ones. You know, for many of these classics, this was my introduction to the classics, reading these, and then I went and read the real book. Rip Van Winkle, a guy goes to sleep, sleeps for 20 years up on a mountain. He wakes up, he comes down, and he's almost executed as a traitor because the country has changed. He went up, it was a colony of Britain. He came down, it was a new country, the United States. Well, I go through him a little fast because Edgar Allan Poe, he is huge. In my own opinion, he's one of the two greatest writers to come out of the United States. Mark Twain is the other one that I feel. He's so weird. I mean, he had a tragic life. I told you so many of these romantics died young. Well, he did too. He was the son of an actor and an actress. I think his stepfather disowned him. He was brilliant. He got kicked out of a military school. He lived in Baltimore, wrote for the newspaper. He was an alcoholic. He married his 13-year-old first cousin. I think she was 13 years old at the time, and she died very young. But I don't mean to minimize that love. Apparently it was a very strong love. But anyway, his stuff is so weird. And in the Romantic period, people wanted that. This was the imagination. And it was all about feelings, but there's more than one kind of feeling. A lot of his feelings, the feeling of terror. That reminds me, I forgot of one that I'll put in here. But anyway, first of all, his poetry. I don't know really of any other poetry that is so musical. Annabel Lee is a short poem, and at one point he says, "And neither the angels in heaven above, nor the demons down under the sea, can ever dissever my soul from the soul of the beautiful Annabel Lee." It seems to be a poem about his lost love. It's a little hard to tell, but I don't really, even in school when I was teaching in public school, I didn't really often take the time to read that whole poem. This one I usually did, The Raven. What a great poem The Raven is. So musical. Once, upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping, rapping at my chamber door. 'Tis some visitor entreating entry at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. Quoth the raven, nevermore. I find it's great. The Simpsons did a version of it, actually. And again, musical. Listen to this. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before. Quoth the raven, nevermore. It's just such great stuff. His detective stories, his short stories is really what he's best known for. And not his detective stories. But he's sometimes called the father of the detective story. This is some 25 years or more, maybe 50 years before Sherlock Holmes was created in Britain. The Gold Bug is certainly suitable for children. Murders on the Rue Morgue, that's an example of one. The Purloined Letter is another one. But it's his horror stories. Those are the ones that he's best known for. The Telltale Heart. Often used in school because it's not too long, not too hard to understand, and not too scary. The black cat. At this point, if I had time with my classes in school, I would tell these stories, which is not nearly as good as reading them. But I know them well enough that I could tell them, and I would have fun with this. I just don't have time. Poe seemed to have this fascination with being buried alive. The Cask of Amontillado is one about that. A guy gets walled in to a wall and left there. The one I forgot to write up here is The Fall of the House of Usher. So many of these have been made into movies. The Fall of the House of Usher. I would usually tell a version of that too. That's quite long. The Pit and the Pendulum is very famous. I don't like it quite as much as the other ones. The Mask of the Red Death is used in school at the age that I taught often. Again, because it's not too scary and it's quite short and it gives a feel for Poe. And then finally, I put this one up here not because I think it's good. A Predicament. But it will give you a measure of just how weird Edgar Allan Poe was. Well, let's see, he had another one called The Man Who Was Used Up, I think is what it was called. At one point, I read about all of these, and it seems to be that there's something about teenagers, young teenagers, that if they get a taste for Poe, they want to read a lot of it. He's weird, but he's good. He's good. And now, with the next video, we're going to go on to the next period, the Victorian period. So, see you then.